Ironheart is practically unwatchable. Toot toot, Jerry laughs. Yes, there is an alphabet character. They admit Ironheart sucks, but look, they're getting ready to blame you for it because Ironheart fulfills low expectations with weak narrative, poorly written characters, and dull acting.
So with this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
The impacts that she's having on young Black girls, and I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who is that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Marvel promised Ironheart would be the next big chapter in its billion-dollar empire. A fresh face, a new hero to carry the torch left behind by Iron Man. But instead of a triumph, it became a disaster. And right in the middle of the storm is Dominique Thorne. The actress who was supposed to rise to superstardom is now facing tears, backlash, and whispers that her own co-star has turned against her. Because according to explosive industry rumors, Anthony Ramos, the man cast as the Hood, has started pointing fingers. He's reportedly blaming Dominique for the flop, frustrated that her press tour, interviews, and polarizing attitude left fans rejecting the series before it even had a chance. What should have been Marvel's fresh spark became a cautionary tale of hype turned humiliation. And now, the fallout is uglier than anyone could have imagined. With Disney scrambling behind the scenes, Dominique caught crying in public, and Anthony Ramos quietly distancing himself, the story of Ironheart isn't just about a failed show. It's about betrayal, broken reputations, and the collapse of Marvel's once unshakable empire.
Was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
When Dominique Thorne was first announced as Riri Williams, Marvel's new genius prodigy, fans were curious. She had all the talent and the platform to become Marvel's next breakout. But then came the press tour, and that's when the cracks started to show. Instead of charming audiences, Dominique leaned into bold statements that rubbed longtime fans the wrong way. She compared Ironheart to Iron Man, suggested her character was the true next generation, and downplayed the legacy of Tony Stark. For Marvel diehards, this wasn't just confidence. It came across as arrogance. Memes started circulating online calling her the discount Iron Man, and hashtags mocking her interviews trended for weeks. The backlash got so loud that even insiders admitted Disney wasn't happy with her messaging. To calm the storm, Dominique was rushed into a clarification sit-down with industry magazines, where she softened her tone and praised Iron Man's legacy. But by then, the damage was already done. Fans who were once curious about Ironheart started tuning out. Instead of anticipation, the buzz around the show turned toxic, and Dominique found herself at the center of the storm. And the worst part? She had no idea things were about to get even uglier.
To really reckon with what that means for the life that she wants to lead.
It's very short-lived. It's brushed over really quickly, and she kind of reverts back to her old self.
But one thing is for certain about this series is that old agendas aside, let's be very real about this. There's a lack of character development. The directing, the producing, the writing is just way off. It makes no sense at all, and it's very lackluster. There's no depth to it.
Does it defy the haters? Or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. Doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
When Ironheart finally premiered on Disney Plus, executives were banking on massive numbers. Billboards plastered cities, trailers dropped during NBA games, and Disney poured millions into marketing. But when the first numbers came in, the reality was crushing. Viewership was far below expectations, and instead of building momentum, it collapsed. By week 2, the series had lost over 60% of its audience, a record-breaking drop even worse than the Secret Invasion fiasco. Critics were ruthless, slamming the show's pacing, CGI, and dialogue. Fan reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb spiraled downward, making Ironheart one of Marvel's lowest-rated projects ever. On TikTok and Instagram, a new meme trend exploded. People filming themselves deliberately skipping Ironheart or showing empty Disney Plus accounts while joking, "Nobody's watching." For Disney, this was more than embarrassing. It was a financial nightmare. Merch sales tied to Ironheart flopped, toys collected dust on shelves, and Marvel's supposed future was already looking like its past. Inside the studio, panic spread, and that's when Dominique's problems went from bad to personal. Anthony Ramos entered Ironheart with high hopes. Cast as the Hood, he believed the series would launch him as Marvel's next great villain, giving him the kind of mainstream stardom actors dream about. But instead of buzz for his performance, all anyone could talk about was Dominique Thorne, and not in a good way. According to insiders, Ramos grew increasingly frustrated. Behind closed doors, he allegedly blamed Dominique for the show's backlash, believing her interviews and public image poisoned fan opinion before the series even dropped. Friends close to Ramos whispered that he felt robbed of his breakout moment because Dominique's controversies overshadowed his own work. On set, their chemistry reportedly soured. The whispers got louder. Ramos distancing himself, agents advising him to separate his brand from hers, and even quiet speculation that he'd never work with Dominique again. For fans, the question wasn't whether the two got along, it was whether Ramos had just declared her the reason Ironheart tanked. Marvel prides itself on building casts that click, but by the time Ironheart was released, fans were already dissecting interview clips of Dominique and Anthony. The awkward body language was impossible to ignore. Dominique looked defensive, Anthony looked detached, and the tension was obvious. Critics noticed it too, pointing out that Dominique's Riri Williams lacked warmth on screen, while Ramos's Hood came across as more compelling. That imbalance fueled rumors of resentment. Some claim Disney considered cutting Dominique's scenes down during editing to boost Ramos's presence. Instead, the studio doubled down, putting Dominique front and center, while Ramos quietly fumed. What should have been a team effort became a rivalry. Fans began picking sides online, some rallying behind Ramos, others calling Dominique unwatchable. Marvel wanted unity, but what they got was a divided cast and an audience that no longer cared. And when Dominique finally broke down in tears during a live event, the world saw just how much pressure was crushing her. The breaking point came when Dominique appeared at a live Marvel panel meant to hype up the future of Ironheart. Instead of cheers, she was hit with uncomfortable questions about the show's weak reviews and negative fan reception. Cameras caught her faltering as the pressure mounted, her smile fading, her eyes welling with tears. And in a moment that quickly went viral, Dominique broke down in front of the audience. Clips of her wiping her face and struggling to answer questions spread across TikTok and YouTube within hours. Fans were divided. Some showed sympathy, arguing that she had been set up to fail by Disney's bad writing and Marvel fatigue. Others mocked her, saying she wasn't ready to carry the MCU and should never have been cast. Instead of repairing her image, the meltdown amplified the narrative that Dominique wasn't cut out for Marvel stardom. Headlines described her as crumbling under pressure, and memes calling her the crying Ironheart swept across social media. The conversation shifted from whether Ironheart was a bad show to whether Dominique herself was the problem. Inside Disney's offices, the panic was real. Executives who once touted Dominique as Marvel's future were suddenly questioning whether they had made a billion-dollar mistake. Emergency meetings were held, exploring every option, from recasting Riri Williams in future projects to quietly shelving the character altogether. Toy lines tied to Ironheart were scaled back without announcement. Planned promotional appearances were canceled or minimized. Leaked insider notes revealed that Disney was considering reducing Dominique's screen time in future Marvel crossovers, limiting her role to brief cameos. The once promising new Iron Man was now viewed as a liability. Even Anthony Ramos seemed to feel the shift. Sources claim Disney was far more enthusiastic about developing his character, the Hood, for future projects. But they couldn't escape one truth. The entire Ironheart brand was poisoned in the eyes of fans. Dominique had become the face of Marvel's biggest misfire since Eternals. With rumors of recasting swirling, new speculation hit the industry blogs. Dominique Thorne might take Disney to court. Reports claimed she was considering a lawsuit for wrongful termination and discrimination if Marvel moved forward without her. Insiders said her team felt she had been unfairly scapegoated for failures that stemmed from Disney's writing and rushed production. But industry lawyers had their doubts. They argued that Dominique's controversial comments, awkward press moments, and public breakdowns had given Disney plenty of ammunition to justify sidelining her. If a lawsuit did happen, most believed Disney would quietly settle rather than risk even more damaging headlines. Meanwhile, Anthony Ramos was already separating himself from the mess. His agents were pushing to highlight him as a standout in Ironheart, pitching him to Marvel as a future villain for crossover films. If Dominique's career was collapsing, Ramos was making sure he wouldn't go down with her. Dominique's downfall with Ironheart wasn't just about one actress or one series. It was a symptom of a much deeper problem at Marvel. For over a decade, the MCU was unstoppable, turning every film into an event and every hero into a household name. But by the time Ironheart landed, that magic was slipping away. Audiences weren't showing up in the same numbers, critics were harsher than ever, and the Marvel formula that once guaranteed success now felt tired. Recent projects had already raised red flags. Eternals was called messy and overstuffed. Ant-Man Quantumania underperformed, dragging down Marvel's box office momentum. Secret Invasion left fans confused and disappointed. Instead of hype, each new release sparked more doubt. Ironheart was supposed to be the comeback, proof that Marvel could launch a new era, but instead, it became the symbol of decline. And Dominique Thorne, fairly or unfairly, became the face of that failure. Fans didn't just critique the writing or pacing, they attached the blame directly to her performance, her interviews, and her image. In the eyes of many, she wasn't just the star of a flop. She represented everything wrong with Marvel's direction. Behind closed doors, Disney executives were scrambling. Strategies were rewritten, budgets slashed, and new projects delayed as they tried to regain control. But every decision pointed back to one harsh reality: the Marvel machine was breaking down. Ironheart didn't just sink Dominique's reputation, it exposed how fragile the MCU had become. And if Marvel can no longer protect its stars or deliver stories that connect with fans, then Dominique's collapse may be remembered as the moment that revealed the Empire's crown was beginning to crack. Dominique Thorne stepped into Marvel with sky-high expectations. She wasn't just another actress, she was the face of Ironheart, the character meant to carry Iron Man's legacy into a new generation. But instead of becoming Marvel's breakout star, she's now tied to one of its biggest embarrassments. Between the show's flop, her public breakdown, and Anthony Ramos allegedly blaming her for the disaster, Dominique's rise has turned into a painful spotlight she can't escape. The question now is whether she can recover. Some insiders believe Dominique still has the talent to bounce back if she lands the right role, proving that the failure of Ironheart was more about Disney's mistakes than her own. Others argue the damage is already done, that studios may see her as too risky to lead another big franchise. But her downfall also points to something larger. Marvel itself is slipping. Ironheart wasn't just Dominique's failure, it was another sign of Disney's declining grip on audiences. If the studio can't protect its rising stars or deliver the stories fans are begging for, then maybe the Empire itself is in trouble. Dominique's future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: her story is no longer just about Ironheart. It's about whether Marvel can survive its own collapse.